Government cutbacks and the economic slowdown have taken a toll on Boston. If the area is doing better than many other American cities, there's still a disturbing trend, especially around concentrations of poverty and wealth. That was the subject of a new report from the Boston Foundation. We'd like to welcome as our guest from the foundation, the Senior Director of the Boston Indicators Project, Charlotte Kahn. Thank you very much for being with us, Charlotte.
Thank you very much.
First of all, what is exactly getting worse in Boston?
Well, we actually found that poverty has remained remarkably steady since about 1990, but it's gotten, in a sense, more concentrated in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and the official poverty rate has not kept up with inflation, with our high cost of living. So even though the statistics look about the same, in fact, poverty is much more concentrated and is exerting a heavier burden on people in the community. Yeah,
so it's not just the geography that has disparities, this is also about race too.
It's very much, sadly, it's very much about race. 42% of the children in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan are living at or below the poverty level. That's the largest concentration of child poverty in the Commonwealth.
So you might say that the fact that things are the same in terms of the poverty level figure now as they were a while back might not sound too scary, but I guess there's also this inflation gap, so the cost of being poor is higher.
It's much higher, and as you and I know, and anybody who lives in Boston, the cost of living is really exorbitant here. And for those who are, participating in the innovation economy, who have a good education, good skills, the unemployment rate is very low, there's almost no recession. But for people with less good education, people who are struggling to make ends meet, it gets more and more difficult every year as costs rise.
Now, you look at the costs that are at least particular to Boston, what are we talking here about mainly?
Well, housing, healthcare, energy, food. I mean, almost all of our costs are well above the national average, and yet the federal poverty level just is the same for every single community in the country.
Now, the other factor you got to look at is what's going on with programs to help people get out of poverty. What's the status in that now?
Well, we have some of probably the best nonprofits, in the country, and we've got excellent programs. Unfortunately, because the state is getting cut back from the federal government, all of these cuts are cascading into those programs, and we're seeing cuts in many of the programs that are proven to work, from Head Start to early intervention, teen pregnancy prevention. We're really cutting into bone, and we're going to see long-term consequences of those cuts.
Well, talk about, let's say, early education spending, because this is supposed to be an important piece of education reform, because you're not going to have kids doing well in middle school and high school unless they've got a good early education. So are we talking about all the kids getting this, or waiting lists of kids who can't get it right now?
We already had a waiting list. We've never been able to fully accommodate all the children who need and deserve a really high-quality early education, but right now we're cutting back. So, all the research points to the idea that we need to invest upstream in children's cognitive, emotional, and physical development, and that will stand them and us in good stead down the road. In fact, Head Start, every dollar invested in Head Start saves between $7 and $9 later in all sorts of things, and yet we're having to cut back. So it's really time for us as a community and a sort of a civic community in Massachusetts to look at what we're funding and defunding in the state budget. Maybe it's time to take another look at our tax structure. Low-income people are paying about twice as much as a percentage of their income as the wealthiest, for example. That's something that maybe we should take a look at. Our economic development strategy right now is gambling. Well, who's gambling? If you look at it, people in lower income communities disproportionately. So we're resting an awful lot of our economic development strategies on low income people. And we've got to turn that around if we really want to see good long-term outcomes for low income children of color, because they are the growth tip of our labor force in Boston and greater Boston, in Massachusetts, and the country.
You talk about the labor force. Is the big hurdle here jobs or job skills for people who seek the jobs?
It's both. We actually have had quite a jobless recovery in Massachusetts. I'm a little fuzzy on the absolute statistics, but we still haven't regained all the jobs we had in the year 2000. So we haven't fully recovered from the 2001 recession. Then we had another recession. And as you say, for low-skilled people, the recession is much worse. So 30% of those without a high school diploma are now out of the workforce. Those are depression-level unemployment statistics. People with a BA or higher are around 4%, so it's really night and day at this point.
Another disturbing figure is about single-parent families. Not that all of these are bad families, but when the figure gets bigger, you worry, I guess, right?
Absolutely. That's something that's gone up over the years. There are lots of reasons for that. It's a complex dynamic, a complex statistic, but of the families that are living in poverty in Boston, 85% are single-parent families, and that there are high rates across all races and ethnicities, high rates among whites, Asians, African Americans, and Latinos.
Now, sometimes people make very sound decisions of not getting married because the partner does not have the economic security to make this work. So, but is there some other consequence of this that you have to be careful about? When people decide
well, when there are fewer adults in the household, it's just harder for everybody, obviously. You know, some people say that this is really a man session. It's affecting people, men, in construction and manufacturing. I mean, there's a reason why there are fewer, perhaps, you know, marriageable men out there, and it's affecting the whole economic structure. We need to do something about that. We've sort of invested in the innovation economy as if it's only about you know, the financial sector and high-tech innovation. We really need to innovate skills and jobs, jobs and training for people who are out of work, who really, you know, have a lifetime of skills, but they can't find work.
And one of the things that do look different right now in Boston, according to this report, is that not only do we have more people who are poor and it's getting worse for them, but we also have more people doing better.
Well, Boston is a lovely city. You know, you and I have been around here for a long time. We've seen the city really transform into probably one of the most beautiful and dynamic cities in the country and maybe the world. But what we're attracting more and more high-income retirees, executives, people who really have the wherewithal to pay, you know, top dollar for the best parts of the city. And at the same time, it's not so much that the people at the bottom are sinking and sinking so much faster, it's that people at the top are rising so much faster. And that's what we are reading about every day in terms of the Occupy movement. There's really a growing divide that's happening very quickly, and it's mostly happening because people at the top are rising faster.
We should mention to our viewers that people can also see this report in full on the Boston Foundation website?
Absolutely. Yes, and we hope that people do go to our website, read it, and begin to think hard about what we can do, because again, these are our children.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
From the Boston Foundation, Charlotte Kahn. We'll have more news in a moment after this message.